Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about the foreign policy at the turn of the century and kind of how the different presidents at this period played a role in the different events that were taking place and how their specific views on foreign policy really affected what we did. So we're going to be looking at two different worksheets today. We're going to go through this one really quickly here. So this one's got the pictures of the presidents on this side, and we'll run through what each of them believed very quickly. On this side, that's going to be listed some specific examples. I'm not going to really explain those examples yet because those examples are going to come up on the second one, which looks like a little bit of a web. It says U.S. involvement in the center, and then there's different boxes around the edges with different nations' names in it. So that's where we'll get a little bit more in depth into these guys' specific examples. So just as a reminder of where we are, we're starting with William McKinley. So he's kind of the one that really kicks off the whole foreign policy change in America and really this imperialist movement. So he's elected in 1896. His first term is in 1897. He's elected again in 1900, but unfortunately is assassinated in 1901. So William McKinley is an interesting guy because he's actually pretty reluctant to be an imperialist power at first. He is a Civil War veteran. He knows that war is really hard. He doesn't really like the idea of war. However, as he continues on in his administration, he becomes really imperialistic about the different places that we're looking at here, specifically with Hawaii. He starts to really believe that it's America's destiny or manifest destiny to control some of these other places. And some of the places that he is most known for is his annexation of Hawaii, as I said. He is also the president that declares war on Spain for the Spanish-American War. And at the end of that war, he annexes the Philippines. So like I said, at first he's really reluctant to do these different things, but once he starts, he really gets right into it. So you can see on the next couple pages there's some political cartoons here. So this one is a political cartoon that's against William McKinley's views. So you can say these guys in the corner over here, it says these are the antis, which means they're anti-imperialist. On the door you say McKinley and Company National Tailors, and they're trying to feed, Uncle Sam some anti-expansionist policy. And why? Because it's anti-fat. He's saying, oh, here, take a dose of this anti-fat and get slim again. So look what is making him fat. If you look on Uncle Sam's pants there, it says California, Florida, Alaska, Louisiana Purchase, Texas. So these are all the places that America has acquired since the beginning of their country. And William McKinley here is the tailor, so he's the one that's measuring out Uncle Sam's new clothes. And Uncle Sam says, no, Sonny, I never did take any of that stuff, and I'm too old to begin. So kind of the idea here being that America is just doing its foreign policy, right, by taking all these places. But that's not necessarily considered a good thing for some of these guys. This next one here, you can see McKinley is the waiter serving Uncle Sam, and the title of this one is I Hardly Know What to Try Next. And you can see that the bill of fare, or the menu, is Cuba steak, Puerto Rico pig, Philippine floating islands, and Sandwich Islands. So these are, again, just to kind of say Uncle Sam is basically picking and choosing off the menu of the places that he wants to take. So this next one that we have is Theodore Roosevelt. So Roosevelt is probably the opposite of McKinley in a lot of ways. When he becomes president in 1901, he begins this foreign policy of what he calls speak softly and carry a big stick, right? So this actually comes back to Theodore Roosevelt's time as a police chief. So he was the police chief of New York for a while. If you've ever seen like old-timey pictures of police chiefs, you know, they've got their big stick that they carry around with them. So this was before police chiefs really carried guns. So instead they had a big stick, and if you were getting out of line, whoop, right? So the stick is a warning that you're gonna get hit if you're out of line. So what Theodore Roosevelt means by speak softly and carry a big stick is be diplomatic, right? You know, treat people with respect and, you know, get involved where you can, but you need to have the military behind you. You need to have your big stick behind you as a warning to other places that we're going to get involved if we need to, right? So this is Roosevelt's big stick foreign policy is often what you hear it called. So just some examples. First of all, he does help negotiate a treaty between Japan and Russia. It's called the Treaty of Portsmouth. So that's, again, that speak softly kind of idea. He also builds the Panama Canal and works to kind of get that built for America. He sends the Great White Fleet out to kind of show off America's naval power. And we'll talk again more about what that means in a minute. And he issued what's called the Roosevelt Corollary. So the Roosevelt Corollary was basically an amendment to the Monroe Doctrine. So think about way back in American History 1, you learned about James Monroe, President of the United States, who issued this document saying, you know, look, Europe, you need to stay out of the affairs of the Western Hemisphere, out of North and South America, right? This is the United States deal. Well, the Roosevelt Corollary basically is saying, and by the way, if you get involved in these affairs, we're going to attack you, right? We're going to send our military after you. So that is the big stick, right? The Roosevelt Corollary is basically speak softly and carry a big stick, okay? So here, he comes really famous for this big stick idea. So you can see this political cartoon says the big stick in the Caribbean. Roosevelt is pulling behind the Navy behind him there. As he is in places like Santo Domingo, Mexico, Panama, Venezuela. So he's the big stick in the Caribbean Sea. This one, the big stick, you'll notice this time is represented as a gun, where he's got it pointed at Europe. So you see the king over there is trying to make a claim on the Republic of Santo Domingo, and he's pointing his gun at him with the Monroe Doctrine tagged on to the end of it, saying, no, you don't. Like, we're gonna keep you out, right? And then finally, we've got this one who actually represents him as a policeman here. And so you can see Roosevelt is basically serving as a policeman between the old and the new world, right? So you've got Europe on the right and Latin America on the left and Asia and other parts of the world. So another thing that you'll hear in this time period is this is the beginning of America as the policeman of the world, right? Where we're going to come out and we're going to use our big stick if you are causing problems, right? And that's something that Roosevelt is actually accused of. He says, like, hey, who made you policeman of the world, right? And this, again, goes back to Roosevelt's time as police chief in New York. The last two guys that we have here are William Howard Taft and Woodrow Wilson. So William Howard Taft is different. He is a pro-imperialist, but he actually served as governor in the Philippines after the Spanish-American War. So he knows really what it's like in a lot of these places that we're taking control of. So even though he's pro-imperialist, he doesn't really want to get involved militarily. He believes that the main goal of the United States is to protect our business interests around the world. So he comes up with this idea called dollar diplomacy, okay? So basically the idea behind this is we want to invest in these countries, specifically in Central and South America. We loan them money, and that makes them indebted to us. And if they're indebted to us, they're probably not going to attack us, right? Because they owe us money. It gets us involved in the affairs of those countries and kind of makes sure we have an influence or say there. So that's a really big deal, right? But again, he's really all about using money, using business, rather than military might. So that's where he differs from Theodore Roosevelt. Woodrow Wilson is really the complete opposite of these guys. He believes in something called missionary diplomacy. And basically what missionary diplomacy is all about is morality. Woodrow Wilson was a Christian, and he used a lot of this term of like using Christian morality in our affairs with foreign countries. And we basically are trying to pressure foreign governments to be more democratic or get involved when there is a human rights issue at stake. So just a couple examples of that. He doesn't recognize Huerta, who is a dictator in Mexico, who was known for committing some kind of human rights issues, so he refuses to recognize him as a leader. He's not democratic, he's a dictator, like I said, so he doesn't want to do that. He also, after an issue where some Americans are killed, he sends about 10,000 troops, it says 1,000, but it should say 10,000 troops into Mexico to find a man named Pancho Villa after he committed or after he murdered some American troops. So we'll get, like I said, more detail on that in just a second. So this just gives you a good overview of who these guys were. Now we're